This is an interesting display of a Chinese juniper by Pierre Leloup. And what it's interesting here is that it seems to be a tanuki. This is a beautiful display with a defining branch here with a shortened counterbalance and the heavy direction of the apex towards the right, creating a harmonious design. This is an outstanding forest composition of Larix ladicina by Francine Malot. We see here that these are old trees. They have been in this spot for a while. The distribution is not uniform and they have quite a bit of age, very good ramification. We have the central tree in here and a little more visual weight on this side than on this. I would suggest that the defining branch here is this lower right one, but it's unclear because there is a little bit of symmetry, and therefore I would have put the accompanying plant on the right. Japanese maple. These are three separate trees planted really close together, and it's really fantastic to see the moving to the right with the two different trunks, the one in the foreground and the one in the background, to create depth, all working together with a defining branch that is this one here, the apex. The apex is the actual point of largest asymmetry, and this movement up here that eventually may create a cloud here is quite interesting. The accompanying plant is actually looking at the tree, which is normally we don't see so much directionality on the accompanying plant, and this is a detail that maybe was by chance, but it looks really nice like that. Bravo to Mr. Beniamino Conte for this amazing Japanese maple. This is a Japanese maple by David Easterbrook. Incredibly small leaf cultivar. I don't know exactly which one it is. Apparently it's a tree that is 42 years old. There could be some more ramification for that age, but cultivars normally grow slower. I find the table a bit too massive and imposing for such a delicate tree, so definitely the table is stealing the show to some extent, but perhaps that's the only thing that he had. Here is Larix ladicina forest by David Easterbrook. Looks like quite a young composition still. There lacks ramification and maturity, nothing like the other one that is present in the show, and quite a bit of bar branches throughout that will eventually produce inverse taper or will be wasted ramification. And so this is definitely a composition with some potential, but it's too young and needs to develop a lot more. Another Larix ladicina by David Easterbrook, and this tree has a lot of age. It looks like a rock was placed under the base to cover a space within the roots. I think it works quite well with this base and this tree. There are some extra branches that could be removed, and a little bit pushing on the right to accentuate the symmetry to the left. Very beautiful Acer palmatum, again by David Easterbrook, planted on a rock with some accompanying plants, and a second maple to create depth. I think the movement of the tree works really well with this composition. The pot is outstanding and the table works well here. It's not too imposing as opposed to the others. Here is an amazing little showing Larix laricina by Francois Calovi. It has quite a lot of age. It's a small but old tree, I imagine. Very beautiful ramification, no structural flaws, very small needles for this time of the year. I like that the accompanying plant is somehow leading towards the tree and not the end point of it, so they are communicating with each other. Beautiful Yamadori larch by Gilbert Sainte-Marie. Has a nice shari here at the base and another one at the top, which unfortunately is so sort of hidden by the apex. So if the apex was a little thinner and pushing to the left in conjunction with the movement of the defining branch, I think this would be an even more outstanding composition. This is a fantastic Japanese maple by Marie-Claude Tessier. Has an amazing body, really outstanding structure. It is very much symmetric, but it is the style of tree of a large maple in a field without competition in any way and no reason to be asymmetric. The only reason to be asymmetric would be age, and so this is a depiction of a young, vigorous tree, not of an ancient tree, but it's very beautiful. Here's a Scots pine by Pierre Leloup. Very interesting pot and stand built with commercial lumber pieces in a geometric way. That it's very interesting that the table itself gives directionality that is then carried over by the tree itself with a defining branch that would be this one here. Some counterbalance branch here to cover the negative space, and an apex that is also flowing towards the right, giving rise to a harmonious composition. Here we have a Japanese maple forest Penjing, water and stone and the trees, and these are quite mature trees, but not to the level that it barked up yet. But that's quite difficult to get in Japanese maples. It's a very pleasant composition. There is some flow to the right that leads to the accompanying plant. Here we have a tokonoma with a jack pine, Pinus banksiana, from the Montreal Botanical Garden collection, and it's very well ramified. We have a defining branch here. We have the visual weight of the trunk moving towards the same direction, and the apex is not very well defined. It's very very symmetric, and it could be made to go both ways, to the left with the movement of this branch flowing, making a harmonious design, or looking back, which would be even more interesting than the current style, if the apex would have a clear movement to the right, creating a dynamic design where the defining branch and the apex disagree. This would work perfect with this tree because of the twisting movement of the trunk, and that would create this dynamic movement rather than a static image. But this is a very beautiful and old tree that is presented here in this tokonoma with a scroll of a bull. The table and the pot work quite well, and I really love this accompanying art piece, which is called Transfiguration. A very old, 140-year-old Chinese elm from the collection of the Penjing collection of the Montreal Botanical Garden, in a very clear Penjing style with a very well-defined, almost cartoon-looking clouds, which is characteristic for certain Penjing styles from China. Very old tree, beautiful ramification, very well maintained and curated in this style. The pot seems a bit too light in color for this tree and for the table, but the table works well, is not imposing, is a good color and good size, but the pot, I think it's a bit too shiny in this terracotta color. Very beautiful apple tree, created by Nick Lenz. So it's an honor to be in the presence of this tree in this time when he passed away so recently. I really like the dynamic nature of the twisting with this defining branch here. It works quite well, clearly defining an asymmetry towards the right. Very beautiful pot that I don't know if it's also a Nick Lenz pot or not. Very good, excellent table that is not overwhelming the tree itself. Fantastic tree that must be really amazing when it's in flower just a few weeks ago perhaps. A well-developed Brazilian rain tree. Very beautiful base, muscular trunk as it's seen in this species in more developed specimens. It's very symmetric, again, indicative of a tree in an open field without any competition at a young age, teenage years, as opposed to an ancient tree. Very well defined round apex, slightly to the right of the center of the base, that creates some asymmetry to the right and some flow that could be accentuated in the future if the author is interested in moving this tree to a more ancient image by accentuating the symmetry to the right. Here is Larix laricina by Jean Domaine. Very beautiful pot, proper size of table that is a good size for this tree. The pot is outstanding. The little succulents in the pot are very beautiful. This is an old tree with a very beautiful gene that is unfortunately hidden by all the foliage, and it's quite symmetric. Unfortunately, there was an option to create here a defining branch that was not pursued, and the apex also is not clear in which direction it goes. But this is a very beautiful tree, very small needles, quite a bit of ramification, outstanding here on some of these branches. That definitely has a lot of potential and could be made into something more outstanding with more asymmetry that is anchored by this big root here on the right, the symmetry pushing to the left with the apex pushing to the left, or again as discussed with the tree from the Botanic Garden, defining branch to the left and apex clearly moving back. Absolutely outstanding Tuy Occidentalis by Francine Laurent. Incredible natural dead wood. I've been told that this had an extra trunk and another one that were cut, so the work on the dead wood is very good and it shows the age. Absolutely beautiful tree with the apex and the defining branch moving to the right, contrary to the movement of the trunk to the left, which is making a very beautiful tension design. Amazing Larix laricina by Brian Donnelly. Incredible deadwood here that may or may not have been carved. It's unclear, but looks very natural, with the defining branch moving to the left and the apex also moving to the left in a harmonious design. A tanuki, juniper procumbens by Pierre Leloup, planted on a pot that is certainly custom made for this table, which is in fact a root stump. And amazing deadwood here that was used. You can see that it's still in development, but certainly with a lot of potential as this trunk further grows and meshes with the deadwood. Old Larix laricina by Brian Donnelly from Quebec City. It's a double trunk with a prominent shari, very well shown as a focal point, with some what appears to be lichen at the base that adds a lot of interest. The tree is very well ramified and with well-defined pads in this particular style that looks very much Penjing-like. The apex here seems a bit too heavy, pointing to the other one, whereas the defining branch here, what appears to be the defining branch, is pointing to the right, and this to the other tree. It is a choice that is valid, but perhaps more asymmetry, making the two trunks work together, is another option for this tree. But it's an amazing ramification and short needles for this time of the year. The tree works well, the pot works well, good size. It's a very simple pot, but this tree doesn't need a very flashy characteristic pot full of characteristics, because the tree itself has a lot of character. Very nice Azalea by Jacques Lafrance. Very beautiful base with an insinuation of movement. Lots of flowers at this time, so right timing to present it in flower, quite lucky. This movement and slight slanting anchored by this root here gives the tree some asymmetry to the right that could be further maximized by shortening a little bit this branch here and maybe this one to create more of a flow to the right. Amazing tree, good pot, very beautiful, beautiful table by Alex Imbo, I think. Incredible work on the table. The pot works well. It's a simple pot that works the different shades of the color of the clay here, darker, lighter. Darker work well with the different shades of color on the tree, both in terms of color and shape. Well done. A very interesting Amur maple planted over a rock. Very interesting pot. It works quite well with this table, and outstanding, incredible pot or container for the accompanying plant. Really amazing. The tree seems, although it seems old in this over this rock, I'm slightly surprised for the ramification, but it's definitely a very beautiful composition here. An exposed root, Ficus benjamina. For some reason there aren't that many exposed, although it's such a common tree for beginners. Perhaps many kill their beginning ficuses, but not Denis Coté, who has a very interesting exposed root composition here. I feel that the pot is outstanding, really incredible pot. It's interesting that the feet of the pot was chosen as the front and not the negative space to add further stability to what otherwise has a sense of instability because of the exposed roots. As a table, we have this slate piece that works quite well with the color of the trunk and the pot itself. Very nice, Denis Coté. I will now discuss my own composition here. The snowman, the Larix laricina in a windswept style. We have a harmonious design with the visual weight of the trunk going to the left, the defining branch going to the left, and the apex going to the left. This is a design which works specifically as part of a display, even more so than on the tree on its own, because of the Varley painting Stormy Weather. So this is a very Canadian display in which we have the tree that mimics art, so life mimicking art, which in itself mimics life, because that is a real tree in Georgian Bay. We have here the rocks on the painting, accompanied by the rocks here. The height of the tree, the apex of the tree matches the apex of the tree in the painting. So they work together as if there is this crossover between real and painting, real tree and painting. The tree is still in the process of ramifying. I treat it as in refinement, even though there are some sections that are in development, but I want to maintain small ramification throughout. My second display here is Tuya occidentalis. This is the chasm tree, mixed media bonsai with the copper prosthetic deadwood branches. So instead of throwing away a piece of deadwood that broke, why not make it work again in a mixed media bonsai? This is a tree on a cliff, as many Tuya grow, especially the one that is the inspiration for this tree at the Au Sable Chasm in New York. And the tree is reaching towards the lake, which is represented here by this suiban with water and some rocks. The purpose of the rocks is to continue the directionality of the defining branch and to break the symmetry of the square suiban with the water. So here we have a defining branch going to the right, an apex going to the right, and the trunk, the visual weight of the trunk going to the left. So this is a tension design. Tension design is especially useful when you have a tree that otherwise doesn't have many characteristics that are interesting, so it adds unconsciously additional interest to the tree by creating a flow that contradicts the flow of the trunk. So here we have a Tuya occidentalis tension style on a cliff by a lake. I really like this display. This is a very simple display that anyone can make. Very interesting choice of a table and an additional table. They work together. It's a very simple tree that can be done in a weekend perhaps with existing material. Fantastic result, absolutely beautiful. It shows that bonsai is at the reach of anyone, and you can have a tree that maybe has 2 weeks in training from nursery stock, and it works really well. It's interesting that this is a young tree, and the scroll depicts a young tree with a butterfly, and we have here a little branch on the accompanying plant that mimics that in the scroll. Very nice, very nice. This is a display by Christine La Liberté. Fantastic.